In this video, I'm going to be going over common myths about bipolar disorder and why they're not accurate. And if you are new here, my name is Kit and I have the bipolar type of something called schizoaffective disorder, which is a condition where someone experiences symptoms of schizophrenia, but also symptoms of a mood disorder, which can be either major depression, or in my case, like I mentioned before, bipolar, where basically the mood disorder portion resembles that of bipolar disorder. Hence why I feel confident covering this topic. But before we go any further, I want to go over something very important, and that is, what exactly is bipolar disorder? I want to lay out a definition for you guys. The short version is that bipolar disorder is a very serious but common mood disorder where someone goes through cyclical episodes of elevated mood, called mania or hypomania, and depression. Mania and hypomania are these states where someone might be making a lot of impulsive decisions, spending a lot of money, or being intensely creative, to name a few. And then there's depression, which is essentially the opposite of mania, where someone might not do much at all and feel very down. And the vast majority of people with bipolar disorder spend a lot more time in depression than they do in mania or hypomania. And so this manic-depressive cycle makes up what I will refer to in this video as a bipolar episode. And it's important to note that bipolar episodes vary from person to person, meaning that someone can go through any level of mania, any level of depression, a mixture of both in a mixed state, and they can happen in any order and repeat themselves throughout each cycle. And so you might be figuring out now, if you hadn't already, that bipolar episodes kind of suck. But enough about that. Now that we have basic definitions and knowledge out of the way, let's get started on busting some myths. So I'm going to go over 6 of them, talk a little bit about why they're so commonly believed, and then disprove them with cold, hard facts. So hang in there with me, and hopefully you'll learn a few things. The first myth is that bipolar people are violent and dangerous, and this is a myth. Yes, it's a myth, and I want to get it out of the way first. The impulsive nature of mania and hypomania, and the very existence and possibility of something collectively referred to as bipolar rage, might be to blame for this common misconception. But even with that, this myth could not be farther from the truth. The reality is, mentally ill people, and I'm not just talking about bipolar people here, I'm also talking about schizophrenics, schizoaffectives, and even people with personality disorders, they're actually more likely to be the victim of a crime than the perpetrator of it. And me personally, I've had manic episodes that have been bad enough that they have literally ruined my entire life. And I have gotten mad and upset at people for seemingly no reason, but I've never once thought about hurting another person. And many other people who experience bipolar disorder or bipolar symptoms would say the same, that they don't have thoughts of hurting other people. But yes, there have been a few bad apples over the years. There's bad apples everywhere, but those bad apples are not indicative of the entire bipolar population, and I think that's really important to remember. So, myth 1, busted. The second myth is that bipolar people can't hold stable relationships. And I think this one really originates from the very nature of bipolar episodes. When someone is in a bipolar episode, oftentimes they aren't acting like themselves, and naturally, this can be very hard to deal with. The reality is that bipolar people have many different sides to themselves because of the very nature of the condition. So naturally, with that in mind, not everyone is going to be able to weather those changes in relationships, which contributes to this myth that bipolar people can't hold stable relationships. But just because it is difficult to hold a stable relationship doesn't mean it's impossible. So no, bipolar people are not destined to be alone forever. It just means they have to find the right people to ride the waves with them. And in a world full of ableism, this is actually really hard to do, but it's far from impossible. And this goes for, of course, romantic relationships, but it also goes for platonic relationships and relationships with employers and coworkers. And so, another myth busted. And building off the previous myth, the next myth is that bipolar people cannot hold jobs. And here's the thing, not every bipolar person can hold a job. Sometimes bipolar is bad enough that people are unable to work, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But taking those people and then assuming that because they cannot work, that no bipolar people can work, is where this myth comes into play. Due to the emotional dysregulation that comes from having a bipolar episode, it can be very hard to work under those conditions. Because again, the bipolar person, well, they're in an episode, they might not be themselves. However, and I kind of want to maybe bust a little mini myth here, It's important to note that bipolar people aren't always in episodes. People can go months and even years in between episodes, especially when managed properly with medication, therapy, and a good support system. So because of this, when someone isn't in an episode, they'll have normal reactions, normal moods, and will act more normal than you think, to the point where you might not even notice or know or realize that your coworker is bipolar. And because of that, many bipolar people can hold down a job just fine. So don't think that just because someone's bipolar, it automatically means that they cannot work. Chances are you might know a bipolar who can hold down a job, and there's a chance that you might be the bipolar that's holding down a job. So all of us need to band together to fight this myth for all of our sake. And again, for the bipolars that can't hold jobs, you guys are valid too. So this myth, busted. This next myth is all about mania, 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 and it's that mania is always this sunshine and roses amazing bright thing, right? Nope, wrong. Mania can be good. Yes, I'm not gonna discount that. But this myth will be best busted by me sharing a little bit of my experience with my own bipolar symptoms. I mean, when I'm manic, I feel like $1,000,000 for the most part. I can do anything and everything, and I don't need to eat, sleep, or take a break. But keyword, most part. Because at the same time, I also feel my control slipping from me, like I'm flirting with the deep end of a pool about to sink all the way down, or I'm sitting on the edge of the cliff with my feet dangling over the edge and it's a long, long, long way down. And I'm also so irritable, and I don't want to snap at people, but oftentimes I end up doing it anyway. And finally, I can't sit still, so if I'm in a situation where I have to, then it's like torture. There are two sides to every coin. And I actually have a friend that when he gets manic, he doesn't get euphoric at all. He just gets super irritable. So it's not even guaranteed to be fun for even a little bit of the time. And while yes, parts of mania can be like having the best day of your life times 100, there's also a lot of drawbacks that cause immense amount of pain to the person experiencing the manic episode. Ever been up for days in a row, weary but unable to slow down and go to sleep? Ever gotten so goal-oriented that you forgo every single bodily need just to finish your mission? If you've ever been manic, you probably know what I'm talking about. And at the end of a manic episode, typically I'm so far past the point of burned out that it's not even funny, and then the depression hits, and it's just, God, everything, yeah, crap just hits the fan. And that's the reality of mania. Mania is not all sunshine and roses, and it should not be considered as such. So, myth 4, busted. The fifth myth is that once a bipolar episode starts, it cannot be stopped. This being a myth is so sad to me because it fosters an environment of helplessness in the face of this disorder. And honestly, just that thought alone is, ironic I say this, depressing. The reality is that once a bipolar episode begins, if the person who's bipolar figures it out, whether it's by themselves or with the help of another person, the episode actually can be stopped and controlled. Doctors can actually adjust current medications or start new ones to combat episodes in their early stages. But for many people, this is hard because oftentimes mania comes first, and like I just said a little while ago, that can be really, really, really fun. So why would someone want to stop the good feeling? But when depression hits, things can get really scary really fast for the bipolar person. So getting to a doctor as soon as possible after an episode begins is the best way to get things under control before they run the risk of ruining lives. Because that's what untreated bipolar episodes can do. They can ruin someone's life. So, myth 5, busted. Get to the doctor, people. And realize the doctors are one of the biggest assets to bipolar people to help them stay out of the pit. And the final myth, and oh my goodness, this is a doozy. It's that bipolar people, when they're not in episodes, they don't have to take their meds. And this is so wrong and actually so dangerous as well. Medications for many psychiatric disorders, not just bipolar disorder, are meant to be taken long term. However, like I mentioned earlier in this video, sometimes when a bipolar person is in an episode, they can get an adjustment to their current medication or supplemental medication that helps them get out of that episode. Those things are inherently temporary. However, the bipolar person still has to take maintenance medications, usually every day. Some are injectables, which are taken like once a month or something like that. But those long-term medications, if those are messed with, bad things can happen very, very, very fast. The reality is that episodes are controlled and reduced by those maintenance medications. So if someone was to suddenly go off of them, well, they would get a rebound in symptoms and it would probably send them directly into an episode. And there's a good old saying, and I love this, and I'll throw up a picture of it over here, and it's, if you're happy and you know it, it's your meds. And that is so true. I was diagnosed with a mood disorder nearly a decade ago, and I still take the very first mood stabilizer I was prescribed every single night. And I have actually thought about talking to my doctor about lowering it, seeing if I can go off it because I'm doing so well, but I can't forget that the reason I'm doing so well is because I'm on it. So I should keep it at the dose it's at and still take it every single day. So weird how brains work, right? So, final myth busted. And those are the top myths I hear about bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is a complex condition that is very misunderstood by so many people, and that includes the media, where a few vocal people with some bad experiences basically ruin it for the rest of us. Bipolar people are just like anyone else though. They just have a few extra rules that they have to follow in order to live a stable life. Because meds, therapy, and a good support system can, yes, quite literally be the difference between life and death, but more accurately, it just determines whether someone has a good or a bad quality of life. And bipolar people can live happy, fulfilling lives. They can have lasting relationships, romantic, platonic, or otherwise. They can hold jobs. They have hobbies, hopes, wishes, dreams. They're just like anyone else, and most importantly, because of their condition, they are not doomed to suffer forever. And really what I want to send you home with in this video is that a lot of what people think about bipolar disorder is built off the experiences of a few rather than the knowledge of the many. Anyways, I hope you learned something in this video, and if there's a myth that I didn't cover that you wish I had covered, feel free to drop it in the comment section down below where other people can see it. Other than that, thank you so much for watching this video and tuning into this channel. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.